Well, another day, another video. Today we are continuing Game of Thrones slash A Song of Ice and Fire slash House of the Dragon content. Today talking about all of the Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon TV seasons and ranking them from worst to best on a tier list. Today we're going to go through all 8 seasons of Game of Thrones as well as the first season of House of the Dragon and rank them on a tier list. This is just my ranking. My rankings of these seasons have drastically changed over the years. The more I rewatch the series, I pick things up that I didn't pick up before. I lose interest in things that I used to have interest in. So my list is absolutely not the best list. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. I will do my best to justify why I am placing my rankings where I'm placing them. But with that being said, we're going to start talking about Game of Thrones Season 1. I think this is an absolute A-tier season of television. I think it gets off the ground running. The first time I ever watched Game of Thrones, I really struggled to get through the prologue chapter in the show. The White Walker scene at the beginning of the show I thought was really long for my taste. The first time I tried to watch it, of course, I was probably like 14, 15 years old. And I really picked the show back up when I got to college and finally got through the first episode. And it obviously the cliffhanger at the end of the first episode. The first season of the show really serves as a mystery novel, and that's I have found over the years, whether I like it or not, that mystery as a subgenre or as a, how do I describe it? I like mystery novels that aren't in the mystery genre, if that makes any sense. So I really like the first season, the first book, Game of Thrones. I really like all of the Harry Potter novels because they are inherently mystery novels. But I really like season 1. I like that it kind of set the tone for binge watching before binge watching was a thing. It was still airing weekly, but each episode had a cliffhanger that really kept you on your toes to want to watch the next episode. And I think this season started the show off really strong after what was supposedly a disaster of an initial pilot, but they reworked the first episode, recast a lot of the original parts, and we have never seen the original pilot, but the first season is fantastic. Why I don't put it in S tier, I think the show is still trying to find its feet. A little of the characters are still not quite in line with their... So how do I describe it? They're either not perfect with their book counterparts or not far enough removed from their book counterparts that it feels like the show is really trying to find its footing in taking the material that is already there and trying to give itself a new face. And they really, really picked that up by the time we get to season 3 and early season 4. But seasons 1 and early on in season 2 really struggle to get there entirely. But I think this is an absolute A-tier season of television. Season 2, I actually used to not like season 2 as much as I liked season 1, and now I think season 2 is an S-tier season. I think it picks up where the first season left off. Obviously, we no longer have the original main character, but it takes all of the plot lines that we had in the first season and, in my opinion, makes them better, save for something like the Daenerys plot. I think the Qarth plot is one of the most boring plots in the book, and I don't like how they adapted it for the screen, but that is really my only gripe with season 2. I think all of the stuff with the wildlings Beyond the Wall is fantastic. Obviously, everything in King's Landing is probably the best it ever is in the show. You could argue that season 4 gets there as well, but I think season 2's King's Landing plot is the best the King's Landing plot ever is in the show. And I really like all of the King's Landing stuff, and so that might be why I really like season 2. We move on to season 3. I think season 3 is the best season of Game of Thrones. That is my personal opinion. And I always got to remember, I think, they must be in order. Never mind. For some reason, I was forgetting what the DVD covers were. But why do I think season 3 is the best season of Game of Thrones? In fact, I think it's a near perfect season of television. Of course, you have all of the plots leading up from the War of the Five Kings, leading to the Red Wedding at the end of the season. You have all of the Peter Baelish and Sansa stuff in King's Landing leading into season 4. You see the tensions rising with Cersei and Tyrion with Tywin now in the picture in King's Landing, as well as the inclusion of the Tyrells in King's Landing, which adds a whole new political dynamic. And then, of course, you have all of the stuff with Jaime and Brienne. I think that is one of the best plot lines in the show until they, of course, butcher it in season 7 and 8. But all of the characters, for the most part, I think are at their best in season 3. Daenerys finally starts to get interesting again. Daenerys was always a character, especially early on, that always felt like she was an instrument of other people. And that's kind of her point for the first several seasons of the show. But the first season really wasn't that interesting apart from the dynamic with Jorah and Khal Drogo. I thought was fantastic. Obviously, Jason Momoa on screen as Khal Drogo is fantastic. She drops the ball in season 2 because it's all about her. And now she's got a great supporting cast, but the whole plot behind her is not great. Season 3, we finally start to pick it up with the is the Brave Companions. I can't remember what they call them in the show. No, it wouldn't be the Brave Companions, because who am I thinking of? Dario Naharis and the companies over in Slaver's Bay. I can't remember what exactly they name them in the show. But all the stuff with the Unsullied and the dynamics with her finally moving toward Marine that we will see later on in seasons 4, 5, and 6, I think are great. And all of the Jon stuff, Beyond the Wall, is fantastic. Season 3, like I said, I think is where every character is at their best at the same time, right? So Robb is great. Catelyn is great. All of the primary players in this show are great in this season. They're not all at their peak points, but they all hit this very high point, and when they all line up, I think that's for me why season 3 is my favorite. The only thing I will say that I don't like about season 3 is I cannot watch the Theon scenes. I have watched them a number of times, and I'm finally at the point where Alfie Allen acts them so well that I can no longer watch the Theon scenes. And there are transitions in season 3 that are so well done that they transition and you hardly know they're happening straight into those torture scenes. I can't watch the torture scenes anymore, but that is a personal thing with me. I can't watch them anymore. But fantastic acting, fantastic performances between, of course, the characters of Theon and Ramsay. Anyways, we move on to season 4. Now, I used to think season 4 was the best episode of the show, and that is a very popular opinion. Then I kind of became a contrarian with it, and I thought that season 4 really dropped the ball by the end of the season. I still kind of hold that thought, but the more I think about it, the beginning of the season is very good. All of the stuff with Tyrion's trial is very good. But everything else, I'm trying to think, I really like all the stuff with Arya and the Hound moving toward the Eyrie. I don't like the Eyrie plot with Sansa and Littlefinger. I know it's book accurate, but I don't know. I don't think the material helps. Oh gosh, who's the actor that plays Peter Baelish? It's escaping me. I usually don't forget actor names, but I don't think that the material given to the Peter Baelish and Sansa plot is as good as it could be, especially in comparison to its book counterpart. I know it's a little different than its book counterpart, but I don't love that plot. And I think everything in King's Landing after the Mountain Viper scene is really poor. Of course, you get the scene with Tyrion killing Tywin, which is, in my opinion, a fantastic adaptation of the book. But everything else surrounding it, we miss out on the Tysha reveal. The dynamic with Shay is different in the show, and I think it takes away one of the highlights of the book, that is Storm of Swords. So I wouldn't say season 4 drops the ball by the end. Of course, end of the season we also get the culmination of the Wildling plot in the north, which is one of the best plots in the show, and then we get the great reveal that Stannis Baratheon has come with his army up there. But the last episode of the season just feels like it's not quite sure where to go next, and that's fairly obvious. Or at least it is to me. That's what it feels like for me. I'm going to put season 4 above season 1, but I'm not going to put it quite in S tier. I think it's just missing the tastiness that the latter half of Storm of Swords had. Storm of Swords is a long book, of course. Seasons 3 and 4 are mostly what Storm of Swords is about, so they split it in half. Great choice. Both halves are very good, but in my opinion, the adaptation of the second half of Storm of Swords into Season 4 just isn't quite there. Storm of Swords, in my opinion, is the best book in the series. I thought about including the books on this chart the same way that I included the Harry Potter books in my Harry Potter ranking, but then I thought, as soon as I get down that rabbit hole, I should probably reread the books again just to clarify my opinions on them, and I should probably read the Dunk and Egg novels again, and I should probably read the entirety of, what is it? What's the World book? Hold on. Looking, The World of Ice and Fire and Fire and Blood, duh. Sorry, my forehead was probably straight in the camera. I was just looking behind it at my bookshelf. But anyway, so we're only doing the TV show seasons, and that leads us into where they started moving away from the written material from George R.R. Martin and where Martin actually left being a creative voice on the series. And that, of course, is Season 5. Season 5 is actually the first season of Game of Thrones that I ever watched live. I caught the season premiere in a hotel on like a theater trip, I think, when I was in high school. It would have aired probably my sophomore year, maybe my junior year, but I remember watching it. The hotel we were at had HBO. I'd never watched Game of Thrones before, and I just caught a glimpse of Season 5. Season 5 is where the show really starts to drop the ball. In my opinion, Season 5 is a C-tier season. Is it a C-tier season? Let me question that again. Yeah, I'll put it C-tier. I think there's too much bad and too much muddiness in Season 5 to keep it on par with the seasons that came before it. Of course, the big criticism that Season 5 has is, of course, the Sansa plot, her being married off to Ramsay, which, of course, in the books is, holy moly, it's Game of Thrones week and I'm completely spacing out on characters. Obviously not Jane Westerling. Jane Poole. Jane Poole is the name of the character that I'm thinking of. There's a lot of characters in A Song of Ice and Fire, and it's been a long time since I read the book, so please bear with me. But they gave that plot to Sansa because Sansa's plot in the books actually gets kind of boring as soon as we get up to the Eyrie. All of the stuff with Arya was built up to be very fun, and we get to Braavos with Arya, and it is no longer fun. It's a long slog. It's boring, especially as we drag it out over 2 seasons. All of the stuff with the Meereen plot drags on, and actually the Meereen plot in Season 5 is actually, in my opinion, one of the better parts of the Meereen plot. We see it a little bit in Season 4, and it really, really falls apart in Season 6. Even though I do like Season 6 better than Season 5, but we'll talk about that in a second. Season 5, of course, we get the start of the High Sparrow stuff. I think all of the dynamics in King's Landing in Season 5 are there, but it's almost like they lack a little bit of life. If you're into seeing Lena Headey walk naked down Dubrovnik, then this is your season, of course. But all of the torture stuff, all of the word that I don't really want to say on YouTube. Of course, this is where we also get the Sand Snake plot in Dorne, which is one of the worst side plots in the show and one of the biggest mishandlings of any book material in the show. I think it's very average. It's not quite Season 7, Season 8 bad, but it's starting to get there. Season 6 also isn't as great as people think it is. We get a lot of spectacle in Season 6. Let me pause real quick and go back to Season 5. Of course, the end of Season 5, we get the big death of Jon Snow reveal. And all of the stuff with Hardhome is very good, but everything else in Winterfell leading up to, or moving past the Wildling plot and with Stannis' army up there is a slog. It just drags on. It has no momentum. It's not politically fun the way that Season 1 was. It just drags. And of course, we get the failed battle at the end of Season 5, them burning Shireen. Just a lot of missing heart in what is otherwise very good book material. It just feels like since George Martin leaves the series, the writers aren't quite sure what to do with his material without his guiding hand, and that obviously we really start to see it with seasons 7 and 8. Season 6 then. I read a couple ranking lists before I did this just to kind of not give myself opinions. Obviously, I have my own opinions that I'm giving to you right now, but I wanted to see what other people thought popularly, because I follow various Game of Thrones YouTubers. I know what they like in terms of their Game of Thrones content. I'm not going to do a whole episode ranking video, at least not this year, maybe next year, but go watch Glidus's video on that. He did a fantastic job with that video. I don't have the time or energy in me right now to do that. As of me recording this, of course, we have just had our baby, and so our house is busy. So I don't have time to do that this week. I would like to do it eventually, but all I can do now is rank the seasons. But I was talking about how I was reading a list on the seasons, and I can't remember if it was Vulture or one of those sites that was talking about people's favorite seasons and what their favorite season was. And season 6 was their favorite. Now, I can see why for a lot of people. I used to really love season 6, and then I rewatched season 6, and I don't love it as much nearly anymore. I think season 6 is solid B-tier material. Episodes 9 and 10 are very good, spectacle-wise. The logic in those episodes is not great. All of the stuff with the Battle of the Bastards in terms of all of the background behind it. It's obviously a great spectacle, a fun battle, a great set piece. But the logistics of the battle obviously don't make sense. And there's a lot of plot contrivances to get us to the conclusion of the season that we have, right? So I'm talking about Rickon being killed. I'm talking about Sansa causing that because she's not clearly communicating with Jon. I'm talking about them rushing for time for no real reason other than the fact that they're worried Ramsay's going to kill Rickon, which of course he eventually does. It just feels like they rushed this spectacle piece to get to a spectacle piece by the end of the season. The rest of the season is really dull. The only other highlight in this season, apart from, like I said, the spectacle of episode 9, which is the Battle of the Bastards, and then episode 10, the beginning of it, which is the start of the Winds of Winter, the Ramin Djawadi piano piece before they blow up the Great Sept of Baelor. The rest of the episode kind of falls apart, to be honest with you. But the only other thing people really like about season 6 that they usually point out is the Bran stuff and the Hodor reveal. The Hodor reveal is powerful and very cool and very impactful the first time you watch it. And then you watch the entire show and you rewatch the show and you get to the Hodor moment again, and it doesn't mean anything. It does not mean anything for the rest of the show at all. You feel free to argue me in the comments below, but they introduce time travel for no reason. It never comes up again. Bran doesn't use it against the Night King. It is a plot device that is thrown into the show for absolutely no reason. In the books, they use this concept of time travel and time manipulation, and they keep it subtle, but it's still prevalent. It's still there, whereas in the show, they introduce it, but they never bring it up, and it's not even hinted at being kind of behind the scenes the way that it is in the books. And so season 6 looks really good, and the characters move in the right direction, and Jon Snow comes back, which is real cool. But he didn't learn anything from his experience, and we just don't really go anywhere. It has the same heartless feel that season 5 has, and it's at this point that they really decided they were going to focus on spectacle rather than actual continuation of the political content that we had in the first 4 seasons of the show. We move on then to season 7. A lot of people really like season 7 as well. I am not one of those people. I'm going to put season 7 in D tier. Season 7 starts with a lot of problems. Of course, they shortened the season from 10 episodes to 7, and that reflected very poorly in both the timing of episodes. The transitions between scenes are not clear, and of course then you start to have what feel like time jumps, which we've never had in the show before. Stuff I do like about season 7, I like the Sam plot in Old Town. What else do I like about season 7? Yep, that's about it. It's a great spectacle. I think the Spoils of War is a fantastic looking episode. It's a very cool episode from a practical effects standpoint. I really enjoy watching the Spoils of War. But in terms of overall season cohesiveness, the plot is seriously contrived when you start talking about them having to go capture a zombie to prove to Cersei that they need her help fighting the Night King, which doesn't actually go anywhere, of course. And the writers come across as though it's this big subversion of our expectations, but they subverted our expectations as soon as they started making characters make really stupid decisions. Tyrion's the one who decides to make that plot. You see Jon Snow trying to get Dany on his side by means that don't necessarily impact her in a positive way. The show expects us to believe that they have fallen for each other, and it doesn't really show us that until the end of the season when they finally have this romantic chemistry, which isn't really there between the actors, to be honest with you. But the show doesn't give us any reason to believe that these two characters are now in alliance with each other, except for the fact that the show says they're in alliance with each other. So yeah, it's cool to watch a whole bunch of people get burned by a dragon, but then of course you get the scene of Jaime charging the dragon and then him falling into the river and him never being captured, and then the Tarleys dying for absolutely no reason. You get dumb one-liners between the Daenerys camp. You get the horrendous plot up in Winterfell where they kill Peter Baelish. Aidan Gillen is the actor's name. It finally came to me. Aidan Gillen. But anyways, yeah, season 7 is where it very obviously starts to fall apart. And a lot of people were still in denial by the time we got to season 7. And I think that's why people still try to prop up season 7 like it's this great, great thing. And it's all TV spectacle by now. Season 7 is really when Game of Thrones became a Marvel movie of a fantasy TV show. And then, of course, we get to season 8. I would like to put it in D tier. I have to put it in F tier, though. I mean, they cut it down from 10 episodes to 6, which means that it is even more rushed than the previous season. We flashed through a very boring setup episode in Winterfell where nothing happens except Sam learning that his dad and his brother have died. That's the only thing that happens. And Jon learns who he is. Nothing else happens in that whole episode. Episode 2 is fairly good. In my opinion, it's the best episode in the season. We have all of the pre-war plots where Brienne, of course, is knighted by Jaime. We have kind of the culmination of all of these character arcs to get to this climax that is the Long Night episode, and it's a very good setup episode. It does everything right in the way that the previous episode, Winterfell, did everything wrong. Then we get to the Long Night. Of course, you can talk all about how it was poorly lit and all of the stuff with the editing and that the battle doesn't make any sense, but it is a complete spectacle episode. It doesn't make any sense logistically. It means nothing for any of the characters except the very few who do die, and all of the characters who do die in ways that their arcs don't necessarily give to the show, and the writers again try to play it off like it was either subverting expectations or they try to retcon the writing of the previous seasons to make us try to believe that Arya was the one who was supposed to kill the Night King all along. Like it makes a lot of sense for her to have done that. Or Theon, it makes a lot of sense for him to have given his life for Bran, which it would have had he had more time to reconnect with Bran prior to him sacrificing himself. If he were to have made amends with Bran and the family in the way that the show thinks he did. Long Night's a bad episode. Then, of course, we get the following episode, which is The Last of the Starks, I think, which starts off very well. You get the celebration, and they start to plant the seeds with Dany kind of losing her grip on her kingdom. Everybody loves Jon Snow. Not everybody loves Dany. And then, of course, Dany kind of forgot about the Iron Fleet. And the end of the episode sucks, and it sets us up for the Bells, which is episode 5, where things really go off the rails, and she kills Varys. And of course burns King's Landing to the ground for no reason other than she hears the bells, and it's supposed to be interpreted in plenty of different ways. The problem was the interpretations that the show wants us to get in the same way that the book gives us things to interpret doesn't have the writing to get us there. And you've heard plenty of people criticize season 8, especially that episode, and then of course we get the really poor conclusion to the series in the Iron Throne. I'm putting it F tier. It was a disappointment of television. I was so excited. It was the first time I'd ever watched Game of Thrones. After I had already watched all the previous episodes, I was watching it live for the very first time, and I was brutally disappointed. Then, of course, we got House of the Dragon. So we waited. What would that have been? We got season 8 in 2019, and 3.5 years later, roughly, we got House of the Dragon. And I think House of the Dragon... I honestly think that writing-wise, House of the Dragon is a perfect season of television. The problem is, it's got a lot of time jumps, and it's got not quite consistently written characters with those time jumps. The big notable difference being Millie Alcock's version of Rhaenyra and Emma D'Arcy's version of Rhaenyra. My wife has pointed it out several times, and I completely agree with her, that they feel like two different characters, and Rhaenyra doesn't feel likable in the way that Millie Alcock portrayed her as now that Emma D'Arcy is playing her. So without the time jumps, without the slight character changes off screen that I wish we had more to develop, I understand why they wrote it the way they did. Of course, we had to get to where we were at the end of the season, and at the same time build up the characters with as few episodes as HBO was willing to give the creators. The writing otherwise is phenomenal. Each episode is great. There's not really a major dud in any of the episodes this season. I think all of the plot lines are very well realized. All of the character dynamics between each other are very well put to screen. We understand each character's motivations. We understand why they interact with each other the way they do. Paddy Considine is fantastic as Viserys. His episode 8, I can't remember what the episode is actually called, but episode 8, his last episode, is one of the best episodes of television I have ever seen, at least from a performance perspective, that being the performance of Paddy Considine. Matt Smith is fantastic. All of the young actors are fantastic. Emma D'Arcy's good, but like I said, I think the writing on top of her interpretation of the character is just too different from where we left off with Rhaenyra at the end of episode 5. I think the continuation of Emily Carey? Is it Emily Carey? Let me just double check that, Emily Carey. Yes. So the continuation from Emily Carey's young version of Alicent to Olivia Cook's older version of Alicent, I think, is fantastic. I think by the time we get to the adult version of all of the kids, by the end of the season, they are very well realized. We understand their motivations and their dynamics when we get to episodes 8, 9, and 10. If it wasn't for the time jumps, I think this would be an S-tier episode of television. But just for the sake of consistency, I can't quite even put it A-tier. I really want to put it A-tier, but I'm going to put it B-tier, and I want to make a very, very firm distinction from House of the Dragon, top of B-tier, and Game of Thrones Season 6, bottom of B-tier. And actually, I'm tempted to put Season 6 in C-tier, and I think I'm actually going to. I'm going to drop season 6 to C tier, just because I think it's so hollow. Like I said, we have a lot of spectacle. We had a lot of good stuff in season 6, but it's surrounded by so much nonsense. So I have to put it C tier, just because House of the Dragon isn't quite A tier, but it's nowhere near as low as season 6 and 5. So that being said, my rankings of all 9 A Song of Ice and Fire TV seasons go as follows. In F tier, number 9, season 8. In D tier, number 8, season 7. In C tier, number 7, series 5, and number 6, season 6, excuse me. B tier, number 5, I have season 1 of House of the Dragon. We move up to A tier, number 4, season 1. Number 3, season 4. And then in S tier, very close to each other, but I still think 3 takes the cake. So number 2, season 2 in S tier, and top, very top, in my opinion, is season 3 of Game of Thrones. So let me know what you thought of my rankings in the comments section below. Hopefully I justified why I put each season where I did on my ranking. Let me know what you think in the comments section below. Let me know what your rankings are, and check out the channel for more Game of Thrones A Song of Ice and Fire content we will be doing all throughout this week ahead of Monday's live stream, where we will talk all things about Game of Thrones and A Song of Ice and Fire. So go check that out, like, share, subscribe, do all the other stuff, and in the meantime, we will see you very, very soon.